Hi everyone, we're going to go through a short discussion on a technique which some people use, and that is the technique of anchoring at the eye level. Now when people anchor, you often see them anchor for Olympic style at the jaw down here, or they might anchor for many trad styles towards the corner of the mouth or the cheek like this. But some people might find a preference to shooting from the eye level like this. Now, ironically, I can't really demonstrate shooting, partly because I'm wearing glasses, which is one reason why you don't see people do this. But while you can anchor here, most people won't do so. So the question we'll raise today is, well, firstly, is there any reason to do so, and why don't most people do it? The main reason why people might be doing this is because it feels very intuitive. So when you first start archery, you realize very quickly that a lot of it relies on looking at the target. So by having the arrow in line with your eye, it matches where you are looking. So again, people will often pick the bow up, they'll draw it back, and they'll line it up along the eye. So they can actually literally sight down the arrow, which might make it a little easier to aim. That's the main reason why I see people doing this. There are also historical reasons behind this. One is that in traditional archery, more so in some of the Middle Eastern archery texts, there are discussions on different anchor points, including the eyebrow, the mustache, and the beard. So there is some usage up here. It's not particularly well promoted, and most people do thumb draw or anchor towards the ear, the mustache, or the beard area. But the more common variant you see today is when people do string walking, which is a modern barebow technique, where for particularly short ranges, you'll see people shoot quite far down the string. So when they draw an anchor, it comes up to around eye level anyway. So that's kind of not exactly the reason why people sight down the arrow or use eye level, but that's where you might see it. Now, to go back to the point of why do most people or some people anchor at the eye, and why doesn't it work too well? Most people anchor at the eye because at the distances you often shoot at when you learn archery, might be around 10 meters, the way to hit the target is to basically point the arrow straight at it, because at that distance there's virtually no arc for most straw weights. Even the light bows we use in clubs, they normally fly flat to around 10 meters. So when people shoot and they anchor normally, say at the cheek or under the jaw, then often the arrow will go above the target and miss completely. So to compensate, they lift the arrow higher and aim like this instead. And by chance, that's exactly where the arrow will go. So at very short distances, this may in fact be the most intuitive way to hit a 5 or 10 meter target, because you are no longer having to compensate for the angle or the gap, and therefore you shoot straight at the target. But does this really apply in any other situation? That's where people go away from using the eye anchor and more towards using the cheek anchor or jaw anchor. The first problem is a general safety problem. We generally don't want things that close to our eye. Again, I'm wearing glasses, which again is one reason why I can't do it, and people wearing glasses can't do it either. But when you have an anchor point this close to the eye, there is a risk of something scratching your eye. It might be the fletchings, on a bad release, it might be the knock. So it's kind of uncomfortable to have something this close to your eye and shoot. So that's one reason. Number two is that it is a fairly unreliable anchor point. So when you are drawing with the cheek anchor, you find that when you draw, you'll tuck into your cheekbone or the corner of your mouth, so it feels a lot more solid when you draw like that. And of course, the Olympic style recurves, you draw under the jaw and it's very tightly here. So when you draw to the eye, it's kind of hard to find the right pivot point. So again, I'm wearing glasses, but even without glasses, it's kind of hard to imagine exactly where you're going to pivot on your face. So you can clamp against your bone here on your skull next to your eyeball. But there's a lot of movement here, which can be a little hard to be consistent. The third reason, at least technique wise, is it's a bit harder to get the weight of the bow into your back when you're that high. So often you see archers who draw lower, they'll get more the elbow down, and you see this T shape, especially the alignment of the elbow and the arm. You'll see that this is the shape, and you feel the weight in your back muscles. Any higher than this, it's kind of hard to get to your back. You still can, but it's a little harder to do so. And because it's a little harder to get into your back, you find that primarily it's the first timers or beginners who are self-taught or figuring it out, who are using the light bows, the 15, 20-pound bows, who are drawing to their eye like this. I've got a 45-pound bow here. It is pretty hard to draw to the eye without any proper expansion. So if I anchor lower, I might find it easier to get into my back muscles, get my elbow back in position. So by doing that, I should be able to comfortably get in position. Compared to floating up here, I'm not really getting it down to my back. So that's one limitation. While you often see many experienced archers with heavier bows prefer a more solid anchor point. However, the most likely reason why people very quickly adapt away from an eye level anchor is because once you go past 10 meters, there's no point. The advantage you get from sighting down the arrow is completely lost when you stop shooting straight. At 20 meters plus, you are going to start shooting up to arc the arrow down onto target, at which point there isn't really a point to aiming along the arrow because you are effectively aiming under your arm anyway. So this is where the more reliable and consistent cheek anchors tend to be preferred, because you can draw to your mouth, and while there is a gap between the tip of the arrow when you look down it and the target, at 30-40 meters, that's going to be exactly on the target anyway. So the method people use is called gap shooting, where you will anchor off your eye line, but you compensate with the point of the arrow. So at short distance, you aim below the target. At mid distance, you aim at the target, and at long distance, you aim above the target. So by knowing these reference points, there's no need to aim directly down the arrow itself. And that's why most people don't use the eye level anchor. So overall, does it work? Yes. Can it work? Yes. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it or it can't work. So you want to shoot like this, you can. Point being is that with archery, there's not much need to aim down the arrow exactly. It's not like a firearm, like a rifle, where you would mostly align your sights with the barrel as close as possible and aim down the barrel or aim down the sights. Archery is very much about trajectories and arcs. So again, once you go past the extreme close distance, it doesn't really matter how you aim down the arrow. What matters is you know where your reference points are, because you're not going to be shooting directly in a laser straight line at the target. It's going to drop onto target. So therefore, any attempt to look straight down the arrow won't work past, say, 10 meters. You're going to have to aim off at some point anyway, and most archers will be shooting at 20, 30, 40 or plus meters. So, like I said, it can work, but it's a very uncommon technique, and most people prefer to use a gap shooting method or a similar aiming method with a lower anchor point. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting and helpful. I'm NUSensei, thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time.